So, 2023 has been an interesting year, hasn't it? Actually, I would say that 2023 was a year with a lot of unusual and unexpected outcomes to a lot of the products we've been covering this entire year. Like, for example, the 4090 actually started this year with prices falling below MSRP in an abundance of supply. And it's ending the year as unobtainium as, well, people buy it up for AI uses and Nvidia cuts production of it to build other AI products. Now, another weird example from this year is RDNA 3, a generation that I would say, at least in sentiment, was disappointing to PC gamers, and yet by the end of this year, it is exploding in sales, and it is selling better, as far as we can tell, than RDNA 2 did, despite being in a down market. Then another example, one that is pretty depressing for me at least, is Meteor Lake, a product that just a year ago, me and Dan, co-host of the Broken Silicon podcast, were discussing as a Phoenix killer and was the product we were most excited for in 2023. And it ended up failing to really even almost launch in 2023, failing to overall beat Phoenix, and is actually going to end up as a de facto Hotpoint and Strix competitor, which isn't going to be pretty to watch. So yeah, some of this year's developments were depressing, but some of them were pleasantly surprising. And as I am preparing the next episodes of Broken Silicon that will be coming out over the holidays, talking about the developments of this year and what we should be looking forward to in 2024, I thought it would be good to take a look at some of the most exciting products launching next year, talk to some sources about what you should all expect, and then come back and just give some open advice. Like if AMD or Nvidia or Intel ask me what they should be doing to ensure their products launching next year did as best as they possibly could, what should they be doing? And the first company that I actually want to talk about is Nvidia because, well, I've seen a lot of buzz going around over the past few months about how strong Blackwell will likely be, like the types of memory it will have. I think I've seen the same leakers guess 3 different memory bus widths or something, and because of this, I thought it would be good to double check with a couple of Nvidia sources. And one of them did give me the okay to quote them, and you're seeing that quote on screen here. Remember, I'm not going into a bunch of specifics about the exact segmentation of the RTX 5090, but those decisions haven't actually been set in stone yet. And so what you're seeing here, I do believe is what you need to know if you're planning ahead for the next generation. Now, Blackwell is being prepared to be ready to launch in Q4 of next year if Nvidia wants it to. They'll have no trouble. They're not worried about TSMC 3nm. It will be ready to launch then. But whether or not it does depends on how well Lovelace is selling before they make the final decision and how competitive they think RDNA 4 will be, how well they think it will sell if they don't have a new generation during that holiday season. But no matter what, they are planning to make a big deal about RTX 5000 efficiency at CES 2025. They want this thing to be ready to go into Arrow Lake laptops, to be slotting into the second wave of Strix laptops. And so whether or not it launches in November or something of 2024, this thing is going to launch by like between January and March of the next year. And that means it really is simply up to them. And effectively, that does mean that Blackwell's launching about a year from now, people, whether it's in November or in February or something. All right. And as for performance, Blackwell's rasterization uplift over Lovelace will not be as impressive as Ampere to Lovelace. However, the RTX 4090 was cut down by more than 10%, so it's plausible that they could make a 5090 feel like a Lovelace over Ampere uplift if they really felt threatened and pushed it super hard. And I do want to drill in on that last point there because some people might argue it sounds like hedging, but it's not. It's just pointing out the reality that the RTX 4090, if Nvidia wanted to, they could launch a 4090 Ti that has 12.5% more CUDA cores, that's clocked at least 5% faster, and that uses faster memory. Nvidia didn't even use the fastest memory on the market, and they're still not with the RTX 4090. And so, well, peak Lovelace performance could nearly double Ampere if Nvidia pulled out all the stops like they did with the 3090 Ti. They haven't yet, and if they were to pull out all the stops with Blackwell, they could probably make 4090 to 5090 feel a lot like 3090 Ti to 4090. It just depends on if Nvidia wants to. But have you noticed how many times in like the past 5 minutes I've said if Nvidia wants to? That tells you they are in a dominant position in the market if so many of their decisions are just at their whim. And therefore, my advice to Nvidia next year is to simply execute with a standard 2-year cadence and check their arrogance a little bit. That's it. Seriously, that's it. Nvidia just needs to do business as usual and improve their segmentation versus the mess that we saw with some Lovelace launches or unlaunches, meaning no hilarious pricing gaps between the 80 and the 90 class make it be a logical pricing difference, and nothing like the 4080 12GB or 4060 Ti 16GB. Then, if they just do that, they are in such a strong position that I think simply creating a consistent and reliable generation, it's what people are looking for out of the company that is in this type of a dominant position. I mean, if Nvidia just bumped down the pricing a little bit here and there, I'm not even asking them to be generous. I really think they have nothing to worry about. It's extra greed or underestimating AMD that I think is the only thing that could cause them trouble. And consistency, just saying, hey, we're coming out in Q4 2024, and guess what we got? We got another generation that's like 60% better overall. We're going to launch it at similar price points to before, but some of them are a little cheaper than the original launch prices because we got a little ahead of ourselves there with our greed. That's it. 2 years, it's better. Goodbye. That would look really impressive in a world where Intel's never launched this Alchemist Plus product that everyone told themselves was definitely coming out because some bogus roadmap was shared. And I think people should, by the way, remind themselves of that when they look at other Battle Mage roadmaps. It didn't pan out for Alchemist Plus. Why would you believe it? Why would you believe these roadmaps that half the time don't end up true with Intel? And with AMD canceling top RDNA 4, again, we got AMD being a little chaotic, Intel being crazy chaotic. I don't actually think Nvidia needs to be that generous. They just need to not be insane with greed next gen. Come down a little bit and be consistent, and people will reward them by buying their products. But all right, I've just gone through the Nvidia portion of this video. I now want to touch on what I think AMD has to do to have an especially successful year, and also what Intel needs to do, including updating all of you on what you should expect out of Arrow Lake, which some people online are already dismissing. I'm going to get to that in a second, but first an ad from a sponsor. I'm sorry you have to wear a hat. This piece of content is brought to you by World of Tanks. You can support this channel by clicking on the link in the description and checking out this free-to-play Armored Warfare multiplayer game that by now has garnered a massive player base of millions of players due to its incredible depth of gameplay and the fact that it's fun to its core. There are over 600 armored vehicles to choose from 11 different nations, and they're always doing fun special events. Like right now, they are doing the Holiday Op 2024 until January 9th that adds a festive village that will appear in place of your standard garage. And also Vinnie Jones, the renowned British footballer and actor who will add a unique flavor to the event with his missions and assignments. And there's never been a better time to jump into the fun than right now, whether you are a new or existing player. That's right, you can support this channel through the links and offer codes in the description. And if you do, new players will get a Cromwell B Tier 6 British Premium Medium Tank, 250,000 credits, 7 days of premium access, and 3 rental tanks for 10 battles each that include the Tiger 131, the T78, and the Type 64. And then, of course, existing players, like I said, you also get some goodies as well if you support the channel. You get 3 days of premium access, the 2D style bargain camouflage, and then, of course, a 7-day rental of premium tank Centurion MK51. So make sure you show your support for Moore's Law is Dead by clicking on the links in the description and using the offer codes that are there as well. And if you do, don't forget that you're going to get all of these goodies too, whether you're a new or an existing player. Check out World of Tanks today, or I'll never take this hat off of my dog. All right, so AMD. To be honest, AMD actually has a lot to be excited for going into 2024. Like, for example, right now they're shipping Hawkpoint, which is something that was only ever originally intended to be a cheap refresh of Phoenix in the mid-range of their APU lineup, just like the Rembrandt Refresh 7735HS was at the beginning of this year. And the fact that it's actually competitive with Meteor Lake and possibly just overall better, it's a shocker, but a positive shocker if you're somebody that works at AMD. And then, of course, after that, though, they'll have their real always originally intended Meteor Lake competitor, the 12-core Strix APU coming, which is going to dominate laptop performance. And then, of course, they'll have Zen 5 also launching to thrash Intel on desktop and in servers. And then they have RDNA 4 coming that, well, won't be chart-topping in performance, is poised to be a perfect pairing with Strix in laptops, and might just hit that perfect level of raster performance at a low price that people are looking for in the mid-range market. But that raster performance with RDNA 4, it needs to be backed up by a consistent expectation of what else you are getting in a Radeon package. You see, earlier this year, I did a video about Radeon's blueprint for success around the 7800 XT launch that noted that now we have several examples in recent history that if AMD has a product that is overall 30% better than its Nvidia counterpart, people will not hesitate to buy it, and it does tend to outsell Nvidia, which is quite a big deal. And that is quite different than how things were 10 years ago. And that's just because there were just a substantial amount of people back then that just wouldn't buy Radeon no matter what and didn't know who AMD was. Now, maybe this is a knock-on effect of Ryzen, but people know who AMD is now. They will consider buying AMD for the right price. But if that price is too much of a gap to the Nvidia counterpart, I honestly think it's unsustainable long term. And I think that gap would shrink from, say, around 30% to below 20% if the experience of the package you were getting was just more consistent. If, AMD could just come out there and just openly say it, own it, but make that argument. Hey, I know Nvidia typically has more ray tracing performance at the same competitor level. And yeah, DLSS is better than FSR. We're not going to pretend it isn't. But FSR, it's really close. It always works. It's in almost every game. And you know what else? We also tend to give you more RAM and have a better graphics menu system and software stack. We have our other things like Radeon Chill as well. They're so close to being able to make that argument where really they only need to charge 10 to 15% less than Nvidia, but they're not there yet. The FSR 3 launch was honestly embarrassing, very embarrassing, and they have borked the rollout of certain features and had certain games launching with their newest stuff have frame pacing issues. It's been a bad time. Now, we are seeing improvements happen, but we're also seeing things happen like XE super sampling, the non-accelerated version, catch up to FSR in image quality. If I worked at AMD, I would say this is absolutely unacceptable. If we're going to go out there and make this argument that our overall package has way better value than Nvidia, then it has to be a package that we don't randomly just backstep in. And we can't let consumers get this feeling that DLSS, the gap is widening. And that's what it really comes down to. Everything AMD launches should launch when it's ready, not when they feel like they have to rush it out the door so they don't look like they're that far behind. Because Nvidia, they have DLSS 3.5 now, and they will have 4, I'm sure, in about a year. And Nvidia is not slowing down in this department. And I don't think it's actually as bad as Radeon might think it is to be a little bit behind Nvidia in some departments, as long as the people considering your products get the feeling that the gap isn't going to widen. That if they buy a Radeon product, yeah, sure, DLSS 3.5 is better than FSR 3, but it's only a bit better, and AMD will catch up soon enough. In the meantime, I've saved money, I have more VRAM, and I have other little features like Radeon Chill. No big whoop. But it feels like a big whoop if a consumer goes to a store and says, if I buy that graphics card, is the software gap with Nvidia going to be larger in a year? You can't have people questioning that. And so, yeah, that is my advice to AMD. Before they launched like the RX 8800 XT, as I've already leaked, is targeting 4080 performance. If it gets to 4080 performance, if they can sell it for around $500 to $600 or something, it's going to be way more of an effective launch if it only launches when it's ready with the software to back it up consistently. And again, it's okay. If you have the 8800 XT mostly ready, AMD, in, say, September, and FSR 4 is almost ready, whatever, don't launch it. Launch it in November when it's entirely ready. Who cares if Blackwell were to launch first? Make it so when you launch it, it's 100% ready. It's time to stop with this thing where we just rush things out the door, trying to either preempt or catch up to the competitor. Act with confidence and purpose. We're launching this now because it's ready, and we think you'll want it. And that was mostly advice, of course, for AMD's GPU division. For the CPU division, It's a little bit of that, and honestly, just a little bit of what I said to Nvidia, because in AMD's position in the CPU market, at least technologically, is much more comparable to Nvidia's position in the GPU market. It's not to say they have most of the market share in CPU right now, but they're getting close to 50% in some areas. And so, really, my advice then, yeah, to their CPU division is just execute on time, logically, with a little less greed, and just put out things when they're ready. Right now, we're already seeing that Zen 4 is a Intel 14th gen killer. AMD's already killing Intel's 14th gen without launching Zen 5. And actually, when I see that, I can't help but think that if I were in the boardroom at AMD, I'm just being honest, I would be advocating for them to push back the Zen 5 launch a couple of months if it means they can have a ton of stock available and the X3D chips ready or right around the corner, so they can just go boom, 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 boom. These are the price points. They beat them at everything. There's a ton of availability, and take the market before Arrow Lake even launches. But speaking of Arrow Lake, yeah, let's get to the blue portion of this video, which, I'm going to be blunt, I think 2024 is going to be an incredibly rough year for Intel, and you can already see that other people online are saying the same thing, with some people apparently expecting Arrow Lake to be no better than Raptor Lake, which, how could this have happened? Well, I'll tell you how this happened, and I'll compare it actually to Emerald Rapids. If you'll look around, Intel's new Emerald Rapids Xeon products are actually being spoken of in a fairly positive light, despite, I would definitely argue, Emerald Rapids is far more behind AMD's EPYC products and server and performance than Intel's Meteor Lake APU is behind AMD's APU and laptops. So why is this? Why are people saying Emerald Rapids is kind of good? It's because Intel didn't overhype Emerald Rapids for 2 years. But what they did with Meteor Lake is go out there for years and say that it would be a breakthrough x86 architecture and a Centrino moment for the company. And then they delivered this crap that couldn't even beat the competition overall, despite using 36% more silicon. This has got to stop. Intel, Pat, here's my advice for next year. Shut up and execute. Stop overhyping your products. Stop building everything up, because when you don't overhype things, even products that lose like Emerald Rapids are regarded fairly well, and you can avoid people perceiving everything you're doing as a failure. And actually, you got to just stop acting like you're in the lead technologically, because it's clear you're not. You're not. And how is anybody supposed to believe that Intel is going to improve their situation if they keep going out on stage and acting like they have nothing to improve? How can you improve yourself if you won't admit what your faults are? Intel, admit you're not in charge technologically and just shut up and then let your products do the talking. And to close, though, I want to address concerns that Arrow Lake is going to be a complete failure. Look, with Intel, anything is possible these days. I really can't promise you they're going to hit what they are projecting currently. But what I can say is that I did reach out to my best Intel sources. Yes, the people that got me, like Redwood Cove, Golden Cove, all of these different Intel leaks before anyone else did. And they are saying still, right now, that basically what I leaked a few months ago about Arrow Lake remains true, if not a little better than what I leaked a few months ago, which is to say that despite not having hyper-threading, Arrow Lake should deliver at least a around 30% performance increase across the board over Raptor Lake, which, especially if it exceeds that target, it would be better than Zen 5 in a lot of scenarios. So, at least as of now, I would not buy into this notion that Arrow Lake will be worse than Raptor Lake or be another Meteor Lake situation. But, that's what I need to close on. It can't happen anymore. Intel cannot afford another Meteor Lake type of overhype and then bust. Arrow Lake needs to be the Zen 1 moment for Intel, because if it's not, well, I don't think they can afford for it to be their pile driver. All right, and that is going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, tell your friends about it, comment, talk about this video in the comments section. It really helps with the algorithm. But also consider supporting Moore's Law is Dead on Patreon. Over the holiday break, there will be ad-free early releases of multiple broken silicons and die shrinks. Die shrinks premium content. There's hundreds of episodes out there for you if you join the Patreon for just $2 that you can listen to over the break while you're traveling. And we really cannot do this without our patrons, so please consider that if you have that extra $2 to spare. And, well, no matter what, though, have a happy holidays, have a Merry Christmas, and thank you for watching.